Hi everyone, welcome back to the Growth Frequency, the show where we sit down with visionary coaches, founders, and leaders who are redefining success, scaling with purpose, and staying human while doing it. Today's guest is someone who doesn't just talk about transformation, he lives it and leads others through it. Stephan Thieringer is the founder and CEO of the Human Innovation Garage, a global executive coaching and human development firm, redefining how leaders show up in business and in life. Named a top global coaching leader and recognized for his thought leadership in human-centered innovation, if you're a leader, coach, or entrepreneur craving clarity, growth, and grounded impact, this conversation is for you. Let's dive in. Hi and welcome. To start, can you share more about your role as a founder and CEO at the Human Innovation Garage and how your mission has evolved over the years?
Laura, first of all, thank you for having me. Super excited to have this conversation, and I love the project you're doing. And I know and your listeners already, they're here for that reason. So I've been starting the Human Innovation Garage. People have always been a beacon for me. In 2012, 2013. So I've been at coaching and in the Human Innovation Garage for a long time. And I think it's always lovely when people say, I'm the CEO and founder. The reality is I take the light bulbs out, I bring the water, I empty the trash, just like a startup, because we're a boutique firm. So we're just about 10 people in the organization, and we staff up for various things like retreats or dinners or events. But day to day, what it really means is for me is to supporting and serving people in kind of the mission that we have as a company in really helping people, like your podcast said, to grow and to also self-assess and have self-awareness, to really serve and support people in that manner. So day to day, as fancy as sometimes titles are, the reality is I work one-on-one with people, I work one-on-one with teams, individuals, or one-to-many or many-to-one. The formats are very, very, varied. And for me, the beacon, as I said, always has been people. My first career, how I ended up in the United States, was hospitality, people in New York. And, it's been really a privilege also. I think that's the biggest part. You have to remember when people allow you, it's like dentists and hair salons. But this is even deeper when people allow you to really enter into their mind, into their sphere, into their soul, into their heart. And we'll talk, I'm sure, about this a little bit more later. It's a privilege, and I've truly enjoyed it. And as a second half, besides serving and supporting people, it's also the business aspect. How do you scale as an entrepreneur? I've started multiple companies. I was in education technology for a long time. And I see a lot of amazing restaurants, and the chef is creative, but what they don't think about is cost and food cost and how do we really make it a sustainable business. So a big part of my day-to-day responsibility and weekly and monthly and quarterly, I have an advisory board as well for that reason to hold me accountable, is simply to make sure that we don't spend more money than we take in, and that when we create events that they are profitable. For example, for events, we establish for every single event a profit and loss statement. And if that is not sustainable, it just as a venue, as an event, it just doesn't serve itself to be essentially executed. I'll stop here. I'm sure there's a million questions you have.
Can you share more about those events? It looked very fascinating on your website.
Thank you. So there's really two events we focus on. One is what we call Dinners That Connect, and the other part is Destination Retreats. Dinners That Connect are, I don't want to say self-serving, but they are fun for me because I travel. For example, I have a couple of keynotes, which I'm giving again in September, one in Antigua, Guatemala, and the other one in Detroit. People always laugh when I say this in one sentence. I go to Antigua and to Detroit. And the evening before, I'll make a point to be there the night before and invite some people locally that I know, potentially people what we call anchors and masterminds. You may have heard that expression, you have an anchor, somebody who people want to be at the table with or they're intrigued by. And you invite 2-3 people, and then suddenly, before you know it, you have 10, 12 people around the table. And that's kind of the capacity on the Dinners That Connect. And they're purely really being a connector, being somebody who introduces. But as you are a coach, and I'm speaking potentially to a lot of coaches who are listening, do not underestimate, and I used to do it with corporate, do not underestimate the right and the access that gives you if you spend an evening 2 hours, 3 hours with people at a table, even though they pay for their own dinner. So there's no cost other than the dinner. to them, it allows you access, it allows you dialogue, it allows you connection, it allows you a community, it allows you, that community conscience, so to speak, and you're building amazing connections. And I think one thing more than ever in 2025, going into 2026, people understand this connection, human connection, and really being able to understand each other on not just the level of a title is truly a connection. And if we can do that for 1 or 2 or 5 or 8 people in the course of an evening, that's amazing. The second part is retreats. So we pick locations. I've done retreats here in Boston at places like the Intercontinental, where I bring people in who are Olympic athletes, and we talk about how does an Olympic athlete prepare similar to a business person. We bring neuroscientists in to talk about the brain, about various things that we know today about that. We talk about health. Health, we talk mostly in, business guys. I always hear them talk about, I go to the gym. I run every day. Well, do you sleep? How do you eat? What else do you do? How do you treat really, everything from at what time you eat, at what time you sleep? Aura Ring, not to have a plug for Aura Ring, but I love my Aura Ring because it tells me the quality of my sleep. And it asks me and invites me at that moment to say, interesting, my sleep tonight wasn't that great. Why? So it's not that this thing gives me all the answers, but it invites me to inquire further and to be more conscious. So there's many, many levels. So we do destination retreats also as far as Costa Rica, Dominican Republic. We've done it in Italy, and we do it there on farms. Oftentimes it's a 4-day retreat. You arrive Friday. You do not leave until Monday morning. Let me explain. There's a lot of coaches listening. The person that has to clock in on Monday morning, 8 o'clock, 8:30 in their business because the boss tells them to, is not the person that we would like at the retreat. We want somebody who has journeyed a little bit. We want somebody who has experienced life. And there's not just good experiences. There's a lot of, including myself, right? They say, the best therapists and the best coaches are the ones who've been through everything themselves. And believe me, when I oftentimes work with people, I get triggered. And I have to be very conscious of that. I have to remind myself, interesting, there's a level of empathy because I've been there, I understand. But I also need to remove myself to say, well, that's not me. I need to be of support and service here, and I can't go down the slide in terms of getting completely, inebriated with whatever it may be. So destination retreats are things like a re-emergence retreat, where we bring people come there, they learn some morning practices, they get some coaching, they get coaching on priority management, there's a lot of, let's call it talk therapy. We go as far as parts work. Some people call it shadow work. We go as far as sound healing. We invite some practices in the morning, if that's running, if that's yoga, if that's sound baths, other things like that. We invite, when we do it domestically in particular, we invite a chef. We take everybody to the market. People shop their own food, and then everybody cooks together as a community experience. And then it becomes a conversation about food. You and I have common backgrounds in another part of the world. The food quality here and the awareness you need to have around food in the United States is very, very different than you need to have it in Europe. And for a variety of reasons. And we try to call attention to that because, again, we look at humans from the human innovation garage, right? We look at holistic pieces here. One doesn't exist without the other. It's the same thing with life, work, integration rather than balance. If you're not from a value system also integrating those two, which is another thing, value systems, personal mission statements, things like that. So people leave after the weekend with that and they feel energized. At the end, now you have to transfer it into action. And what the other big part for me always is when I see people go to conferences, I see people go to retreats, they escape. They're like, oh my God, let me get out of here. Let me go a weekend somewhere away. But the art form for us is to be able to say, you know what, while we understand why you did that, we want to help you not to find that urge to actually separate it. So what we support you with here, what we teach you, what we invite you to think about, if you take some of that back, maybe the environment that you're in doesn't become so, you're not so compulsive about having to run away because you're starting to really look at it from a more holistic, but also from a more reflective way, which is what I always call vision, action, reflection, right? We're very good in vision. We're very good to act. Busy for the sake of being busy. But what we don't do is we don't look back and say, this worked well. This didn't go so well. Why? And I think that's that cyclical, healthy behavior. I think that's a big part of it. I'll stop here.
You speak so well about it all that I need to join some of your events in the future.
We'd
But
be honored.
the integration part after therapy, after retreats,
Yeah.
is as important as the retreat itself. Otherwise, it's pointless. Otherwise, it's just a nice experience and nothing more.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, are you a soccer fan? I always, so what in the United States, please forgive me, everybody who's listening, everybody talks about goals. Oh my God, I have these goals. It's a long list goal, 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 goal. But in the end, it's about result and impact. It's not about process, it's about result. And when you think about how transformation happens, right? Or what's the transformation promise, if that's a retreat, if that's coaching, whatever it may be, it's not just about a conversation. Because if you think about it, a goal in soccer is 7 by 215. 7 meters by 215, a little more than 7 meters. I can put that ball anywhere and it's a goal. If there's a World Cup final and two teams show up, both teams shoot goals, it doesn't mean anything. The only thing that counts is who wins the World Cup. That's the impact, that's the result. 10 years from now, nobody's going to say, so tell me, Laura, how many goals did Germany shoot? And how many goals did France shoot? You don't know, but you're going to remember who was world champion. So if you think about your life the same way, in terms of the vision you're creating, in terms of the way you hold yourself accountable and the way you, what I call inspired standards on a day-to-day basis, it's a little bit like playing golf, right? You don't play against the other three people, you play against yourself. You go to the next hole, you try to do better than the next hole. I hate the word try. You are committed to doing better than the hole before. And day to day, anything you do in business, you interact with people, the way you build relationships, connections. I think from my side, a huge invitation for everybody listening to say, interesting, if I start looking at that, at leveling up with the reflection of what worked today, what didn't, what do I want to do different, and that becomes the inspired standard for the next day, the next action, whatever it may be. I think that's a huge part.
My goal in my life is to take massive action. I love the sound of it.
Yeah.
I love to take action. I don't like to discuss things too much or talk about everything too much. Like, let's do it. This is the Eastern European in me. Like,
I
let's get it
respect that.
done.
I respect that. And I think, I mean, there's many people, when you look at high performance athletes, you look at very successful people, they don't talk about it. And what you see is the impact they've created. There's no large pre-announcement, oh, watch what I'm going to do. No, it's like a couple of weeks ago, what we did is this. Wow, that was actually what you affected. That's amazing. And I think there's also, it says a lot about a human being. I think in business, particularly in the startup community, I think a lot of people think that narcissism is sexy. It's not. It's really not. And I understand it because I used to be that startup founder who thinks everybody's about me, 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 me. 100%. And I will never forget it. I had an assistant in my last big startup, which was an education technology company. And she comes to me, don't ever do this again. She heard me talking on the phone to one of our colleagues. And she goes, don't ever do this again. And she called me out on me, 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 like a little minion. And it was just, no, but it's these kinds of things. And I think as you journey as a coach, there's so many things in a spectrum of business, psychology, human behavior. I work with people on executive trauma, right? What is trauma? Family systems. What's your ecosystem of the family system? And all this comes together. And I think the other part is understanding, how do I put this? When to shift context, right? So today, if I support you as an executive, you may need to talk about your next meeting with your executive board. But a minute later, maybe what we're really talking about is that you're completely burned out and you're just exhausted. So those are two very different topics. So we need to talk about health. We need to talk about, and I'm so inspired by a colleague in the industry who created this a long time ago. He kind of put it into 4 different areas: health, soul, mind, and heart. And when you think about your life the same way, kind of the soul, the deep wounds you have from childhood, from growing up. What is it that you feel? What is it that your trauma is? What is it that you need in the health side? How do you energize yourself when you need the recovery? These are all incredibly important pieces.
I agree. Thank you for your answer. What major shifts have you seen or do you see in leadership development and coaching, especially with the increasing focus on being more conscious and being more human centered?
I think you gave half the answer already. I think the human-centered part is the biggest piece. When we think about, and I gave a talk about this 3 years ago in Antigua, actually, at a conference. When we think about our generation or the generation alive right now, we have essentially six generations alive. And when we then take the older generation and we say, okay, we've seen three, we're starting to see the fourth industrial revolution, if we want to call it that way, and we're about to enter into 4.5. The time span that you as a human being, my generation, had to adapt to it is the time span is much larger. Today, every 5 to 7 years, another revolution, so to speak, happens. I mean, just take a look at AI, and we can talk about AI more if you would like to. If I now put in the foreground what we used to call soft skills, when I was coming into business, soft skills was not something that was talked about. It was STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And the last thing we would talk about was be nice to people, be kind to people. No, it's a hierarchy, right? It's like, I'm the boss, look here, I'm going to tell you what to do and you better execute. That's the way I grew up. The second part that I see completely and have seen completely change for myself, and there's moments I'm very uncomfortable with that still today, is community. Because community holds wisdom. How do we access that wisdom? Well, guess what? The way you access it, by saying, I don't know. Is there somebody in the community that can help me? God, I don't like that, admitting that I don't know something. Because when I didn't know something, my father, who was born in 1927, my father would say to me, go study, go pick up a book, here's a book, here's a book. We had this huge library at the house. And everything in history and geography and everything else, he would just pull a book out and say, go, here, learn about it. And it was a soul journey to learn it. Versus today, I think all the things with people, human-centered, what we can activate is incredible. And I don't want to call it lazy, but I know a lot of people who become very irreverent and lazy by saying, oh, you know what, I'll just ask somebody else. They'll do it for me. So there's kind of that spectrum of, what is smart and what is not so smart. So I think there's both sides. And, from a coaching perspective, when I see that, one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard somebody say to me is, hold space like a monk and call somebody out like a Navy SEAL, right?
That's good.
It's amazing. So it's that moment of grace, that moment of holding space for somebody and the empathy and understanding and just being there. And then at the right moment in the right situation, you kind of bring that mirror up and say, do you see this? This is you. That's what you're doing. And it's a fine balance, empathy and that radical in-your-face candor, which is still nurturing, still kind. Nevertheless, it's pointed.
Yeah. I feel like truth and being honest is the highest level of love and respect, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when I started coaching, it's a name Marshall Goldsmith. I will never forget it. So I texted him at the beginning. I heard his name. I didn't understand the dimension of what he was. That was 13 years ago. And he connected with me on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh my God, Marshall Goldsmith connected with me on LinkedIn? And so he says we have a conversation. And he says to me, when you come out to San Diego, we'll take a walk on the beach. I'm like, okay, I come to San Diego to walk on the beach. And I said to him, why would we take a walk on the beach? He says, have you ever driven your children around? So I have one daughter. And notice that when they sit behind you, they tell you everything. And it's kind of the same thing when you're out in nature, you're connected. Your creative mind operates very, very differently. And when you walk next to each other, people will tell you things they would never tell you when you sit in an office. And I think that's the other piece, right? When we think about creative spaces, we think about where does creativity happen? I mean, I'm looking out at the ocean over here. So if we think about this creative space, it's not in a cubicle. It's not in a conference room. Let people sit on the roof, let them walk around, let them work only 3 hours a day. I will challenge every founder that they're probably going to get done more than that. And the question then always is, what are you pretending that you don't know? Right? That's a double negative. What are you pretending not to know? Mm-hmm. And so it's those kinds of things where I can get very intense about it. And I think that's that moment, you hold space like a monk, but sometimes you just got to say, hey, listen, here's what I see, like it or not. And I think a lot of coaches, unfortunately, because there's so many coaches out these days, and I say it very publicly, you can throw a rock off a stage and you probably hit 20. And right? I mean, it's like everybody's a coach now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying just because everybody's a coach, there's not some amazing coaches out there. I'm not saying that. But I think there's another piece, right? Is you got to do Katie Byron said it, the work, right? And if you've done the work and you keep doing the work yourself because you've experienced it, if that is maybe heartbreak, divorce, an emergency in health, or whatever else it is, and you've worked your way through this, that's a tremendous piece, and I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. What is working really, really well for you for methodology and operations right now?
I think you don't build any practice, in a year or two or three. The saying is it takes 5 to 7 years to kind of build a sustainable practice that, talks to each other, people refer, etc. So what's really been amazing for us, and I'm in particular very grateful, is I would say 95% of our work, 90%, is personal referrals and introductions. So there is no big advertising campaigns. And we're going to start doing some later this year because of the retreats. But it's very, very, it's a privilege to be able to say, hey, we're working with XYZ. And then they go, hey, I have a colleague, a friend, a company you should talk to. And those are just such trusted and valuable pieces. So that's worked incredibly well for us. The other part is what's really been amazing for us is kind of the evolution now that we have a community where we can say, you know what, we don't just do one-to-one. We also go to dinners. We do retreats. We're starting to explore pieces. As you asked me earlier, what does it mean to be CEO and founder? I think we're now starting more and more to get into that what we call ladder of ascension. Right? I'm sure you've heard the expression. I mean, the dream of every founder is to remove yourself a little more and be available when it's needed, or when you choose that you think you can make the biggest impact. And that's a fine balance. So that's been amazing. I think these two things, they stand out for me. And I'll tell you honestly, when I speak with entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs in particular, and you say to them, so what is success to you? Besides that, you're getting 15 different answers. As I get older and more, maybe just also calmer in my own life, you start realizing that the number one value to yourself is peace. Because if you have peace in whatever context, that's a huge factor. Because then you're not chasing, you're not desperate, you're not anxiety driven, you're not fear driven, right? Because future, I'm writing this keynote as we speak, and there's somebody, his name is Frederick Fährt. He's German. Felt like the word is actually horse in German. And Frederick was the first evangelist for Google, and him and I met actually 3 years ago in Antigua. But he just published a new book. And he talks about the future spirit. And that's kind of what the book is about. And he's doing a tour at the moment internationally. And he asked the question, and when we think about Sigmund Freud's biggest fear was the question, what do you want? So if I would say to you, not to put you on the spot, but if I would say to you, right, what do you want? That's a very clear question, and it requires a very clear answer, because it's not about other people, it's not about validation, it's not about accolades. It's really about right here, what do you want? So Frederick says, well, what if all the future and all this anxiety is really one word, which is fear? And I think that's what it is. Because we live today by wondering, my God, what should we have done yesterday differently? We live today wondering and planning for tomorrow. And what we actually completely forget is life is today, right here, right now. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. And whatever I do now, right here, that is ultimately what influences and determines to an extent my personal future. Not yours, not somebody else's. It's going back, what do you want? Really, it's a core question.
Where do you envision the human innovation garage 6 or 12 months from now?
Much stronger focus. So for us, it's really kind of a shift. We're going to be in the same spot as we are. And what I mean with that, not to be boring, but good business is being consistent and recognizable for people. The second half to that is that we're in later 25, early 26, we're going to start becoming much more active, even more than we are in retreats. So the goal really is, did you pay attention to what I just said? The goal really is 6 to 8 retreats very consistently over the course of 2025. The 2 dinners that connect every month. Various cities, I'm exploring some collaborations with some people in various cities, very intentional, people I trust, people I admire, respect. One person in particular, for example, God, I mean, he's so understated, but he's worked for 20 years for the Disney Academy, and he's very shy about talking about it. I'm like, come on, you got to talk about this. People love Disney. We're all going to be wearing Mickey Mouse ears and everything else. But no, jokes aside, I think that's really where we're at. We're looking to add quite a bit of depth there through the retreats. And then the third piece will be in later 25, early 26, to focus a little bit more on young entrepreneur support. I think we're going to create as a community, which we've already started to create, but we're going to start launching, is called the Entrepreneurs Lounge, which will be some self-driven learning. It'll be some content I'm publishing a book probably by later August, which is mostly a journal book, which comes out of my Thursday coffee chats, which are inspirational coffee chats, topics that we're all afraid of to talk about: empathy, fear, what's little, what's meaning, what's anxiety. I mean, all the various words, and those keywords become discussions every Thursday morning for really deep, connected conversations. And we've been doing this, believe it or not, for 6 years now. So we're in year number 6, which is incredible. And there's the same 8 to 10 people as a core, and then other people come in, and it's been incredible. And I started that right after COVID in 2020, in May or June. And so I think that's the other part. And then the other, a big part for us is culture translation, because of where I come from, and living and having had the privilege living in the United States. Now being, since I shared this with you pre-interview, since about 2 months, I have my US passport as well. I think a global mindset, understanding cultures, understanding what local impact means, but at the same time bringing a global perspective to it. The dynamics, leadership, I want to call it leadership beyond borders, because I think we're so contained. And when I think about leadership, I oftentimes in companies, when I start engaging, I see this course behavior. Oh, let's take a leadership course. And ta-da, we're all going to come out and we're going to be better leaders. Leadership is a journey. Leadership is something where every day you pick another piece up. You take yourself, you contextualize your experiences, the more, less, or different you need to do or not to do. And I think that ultimately creates that incredible human. I mean, that's part of the reason why I called the company Human Innovation Garage, because every human has these brilliant pieces. And some of us know what we have, and some of us just need to be shown what it is. And if we take that and we kind of help people seeing that also in a reflective way, maybe some frameworks, maybe some tool sets, maybe some practices that they need to learn in order to then see that about themselves and engage it. That's the vision, that's the mission for us and for me personally.
Thank you. You mentioned AI before. I'm curious, what type of automation or AI tools or systems do you use currently, and are you excited about AI? Are you excited about automating some of the parts of your business?
And the short answer is yes, 100%. I mean, you can't get around AI. I think there's, the big discussion is what is ethical behavior around AI and what is ethical employment of AI. So I use AI occasionally for automation on social media, and automation in a context of, so I'll be transparent. We use a product called Marblism. Marblism, you have 7 AI agents, 5, I don't remember how many it is. And the 2 I use is social media, and then there's a blog writer. And sometimes we use that, and I get an inspiration from that. I take that, I edit it, and then we publish it. So that is a way for me, and the reason why I do it is because I know if I'm invited to write something 2-3 times a week, I will not do it. But when I get an email which says, hey, your AI agents have a message for you, I'm going to go there, and that's my trigger to say, I got to sit down and for the next 20 minutes focus on that and write it or rewrite it. So that's the use of our AI. The second part where we use AI is we use some lead outreach for some of the retreats, which allows us to automated send some emails, second response, third response, at some point we may engage. So that's where we use today AI in the company. On the side of coaching, on the side of analytics, on the side of testing, on the side of human-centered activity around the coaching framework, we don't use AI at all. There are some companies who use it, who think it's the greatest thing in the world. I think AI, when you walk into a room and you meet somebody and that vibe, whatever happens or doesn't happen, AI can't replicate that. And I allow myself today, also in my work, to go 100% with my gut, because I will challenge anybody's Ivy League education that my gut, in terms of that instinct, is a lot smarter than whatever you learn at any Ivy League or world-ranked university in the world. And that's the balance. That's a little bit also the balance between, is AI a threat or is AI an enabler? And I think as long as and I mean, there's huge discussions about it right now, as you know. I forgot her name, somebody who came out of OpenAI. She's a woman founder. She just raised $2 billion. I forgot what her name is. I mean, you may have seen it too. And that's incredible. And her whole commitment is about ethical and human-centered, I'm going to call it again, employment of AI. And I may not do it entirely justice what it is all about, but some big companies, NVIDIA, etc., jumped on the investment. And I think that's where, I think the more we can decentralize AI from the use of one person using it for the benefit of theirs, and the more it becomes a community tool, so to speak, the easier it is. And I wonder what I see in my lifetime and what my daughter will see in her lifetime and what her children will see in her lifetime, and how this all evolves, because I think as humans, we are naturally lazy and it's about survival. And we will always, just like our body does when any organs are cut off in an emergency, we will use the shortest way to connect. And I don't mean connect with humans, I mean connect whatever that may be. And I think AI is to an extent a shortcut. And yeah, I don't have an answer, but everything I hear and read, and I just was looking at the speech of what they call the godfather of AI, and he's very concerned about it as well. I think it's something to be aware of. It goes back to what I said earlier. What do you want? And I think we are, agency is a big part also for an executive or for any human being. As long as we are aware of our own agency, also in the context of AI, I think that's a big part.
Yeah.
I didn't answer you crisply here, but I struggle with giving a clear answer because I'm not a technologist.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't get around AI. There's no question.
Yeah, me neither. I have a team for it, so
Yeah.
I need to understand enough, but they are the smarter ones around it. A question that I ask all of my guests, and it is that if you could have a magic wand and you could solve any problems in your life, in your company, in your operations with the magic wand, what would it be?
It's an interesting question, and I've thought about this just recently and wrote about it. So it's not a problem, but here's what I would change. I would make our services available for free, and to make our choice who we want to support or not based on what we see would make an impact. What that would require is that the way we sustain our business is not riding on the fact that people pay us. If we can change that dynamic, that'd be, for me, the greatest gift. Because it would allow us to make decisions based on empathy, on impact, on world changing, on ripple effect, on affecting people really deeply. Because I believe that when you have some really great opportunity to learn and coach with somebody, you need to make an investment. And I'm not convinced that investment always should be the trigger for them to be able to afford it or not. That's the one thing I would change. Because I come into contact with, and I do some work in nonprofits, boards, on advisory boards in education and others. And I always look at this and I go, oh my God, it's so cool that we can do that for these people or the kids or whoever else it is. And I think as humans, we want to be seen, we want to be acknowledged, we want to be heard, we want to be hugged and loved, as cliche as that sounds. And I just think in this day and age, kindness matters more than ever. And if that becomes the expression of kindness without, and I'm talking about silent philanthropy, something I learned when I was living in India. Nobody talks in India about what they do and how much money they're giving, but they just do it. There's no park bench which says, there's no building that says, no, they just do it. And it's so beautiful and it's so genuine and it's so well received on the side of the person who gets it. And if we could be a catalyst in that, I think that'd be an amazing activation.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I would continue this conversation for a while, but I promised you that we will be done with 1 hour, and this is the way it is. Thank you. Where can people find you and about your company?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you for allowing me to say that. Human Innovation Garage. The easiest way to connect with me personally. You'll find me on LinkedIn as well. Happy to have conversations. Thank you again, Laura, for having me. What a privilege, honor, and all the great things you do. So thank you again.
Thank you. And to everyone who listened, see you in the next episode.